Yeah, sorry. I went a little too excited here, started rambling off. Hello, everybody. Hi, this is Bhavya from Mailmodo. It's Friday evening here. We are all set to just get out of the building after this event and go smash ourselves in some beers. I hope your Friday mornings, afternoons, and evenings are looking up good. This is a very, very special event for all of us here. We at Mailmodo have been sort of working on this for the past 20 days with one of the most wholesome speakers I've got a chance to speak to in a long while, and he'll just be on screen in a bit from now. But just to give everybody some sort of context about what this talk is going to be all about, we're going to talk about the next big um, lever in all things email marketing. Going to talk about the future of interactive emails. We're going to talk about some of the results that Jay, who is the speaker here, who will be introduced shortly, some of the results that we've seen, some emerging use cases, how different functions like product, marketing, even customer success for that matter, have been using interactive emails, and just sort of do some sort of myth busting around interactive emails. And for that, I have Jay with me. He will be in the stream in just about 3, 2, and 1. Hey, Jay. Hi.
Hi, hello.
Yeah. So for a lot of people here who are probably initiated to this beautiful community called Email Geeks, you all know Jay. Is, as I said, a very, very vocal advocate of the community. We've been talking to each other for the past 20 odd days. The amounts of cooperation he's handed over to us in making this happen. The sort of, I mean, he's always been out of his ways in sort of being always available to share his insights, to help us with whatever he's been observing in the world of interactive emails, and just generally a very well-rounded, very, very wholesome guy. Hey, Jay, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. That was a nice introduction.
Thank you, Jay. Jay, before we jump into what interactive emails are all about, I read and hear that you are a very passionate canoe guide, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I've been in the email industry for probably like 3 years, I mean, nearly 4 years. But before that, I actually traveled around the country just delivering canoe trips for loads of different people, from young people to adults that wanted to go out for a party or something like that. So I've traveled all over the world, taking people canoeing and kayaking. So that's another passion of mine that I get up to when I'm not sitting in front of the computer coding emails.
All right. And how did this interest develop? How did you get passionate about this, Jay?
The canoeing or the email?
The canoe?
The canoe? Oh, well, when I was very young, there was a park around the corner from me that had a small lake, and I went along one Saturday morning, and there was a canoe club there, and they said, "Do you want to try it?" And that was it. So from about the age of 8, I was shoved into a canoe, and I loved every minute of it. And from there, it grew and grew. I actually did my degree at university was outdoor leadership, so I actually did a degree in taking people canoeing and climbing and mountain biking and all that kind of stuff. So a bit of a change for what I do for a career now, but still something I enjoy doing.
What is it? What has that taught you, Jay?
I mean, so a lot of it was about getting to know people, talking to people, understanding people's fears and what they want to know and what they want to learn, and also teaching people lots of different things. So I've kind of all of that rolled up into teaching people how to do things with email and sharing and trying to be part of a community. As the Email Geeks community is really close, but then the canoe community is also very close as well, because there's not that many of us. So yeah, just nice people to be around.
That's fascinating, Jay. Jay, about all things email, all right, and you being an email geek, how did the initiation happen? How did you get to know that, yeah, this is what I want to do? I want to be an email geek. How did the whole journey transpire for you?
Well, I started at so when I was canoe guiding, it got very cold in the winter, as you can imagine. And one winter I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go inside. So I went and just packed boxes for a company, which was an e-commerce company. I just packed boxes with like jackets and stuff like that to send out to people. And then and then I started to help with social media. So I started to help them with Facebook and Twitter and things like that, and slowly became more of the computer guy than the packing guy. And then as the company grew from 3 or 4 people, I became, as it grew to like 50 people, actually, I became the head of the digital marketing. So I did everything from the web shop to emails and everything. And email was something that I knew worked really well, gave a great return on investment. And the way we were doing it just didn't seem to be using all of the available things that we could do. And we were stuck in kind of a WYSIWYG editor, like a drag and drop builder, where everything was limited, and I could see emails out there doing much better things, much more interesting things. So I started to look at the code. And then from there, I skipped to a few different companies, became a global marketing manager for a big multinational outdoor company. And then I got a bit bored of that and decided to learn to code emails. And I was actually on the Email Geek Slack channel, learning and picking up as much as I could, when Elliot Ross, from kind of Taxi, Spark Post and Action Rocket's owner, he said, we're thinking about hiring some more developers. Is anyone interested? So I messaged him and said, I'm interested, but I know nothing. I could just about code a responsive email, probably not very well. I went in for an interview, and that was it, really. After that, about 2 or 3 years now, I've been at Action Rocket and learned all that. And yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I've joined the community about 45 days back, and in these 45 days, I've been hanging out there. Perhaps I'm logged into the community all day, and the kind of things I've learned in these 45 days. And I thought I knew about email, all right, and I was so wrong. So yeah, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that perhaps it's the most helpful community out there. They're always on the lookout for each other. They always have each other's backs. The sort of intimate conversation that I've seen in some of those handles, I mean, is just terrific. Is there anything about this community that you would want to share with folks here, Jay, who do not know about the community, and some things that you might want to tell them, and how would the community benefit our viewers right now who are not aware of the community?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll find there's a specific Email Geek sign up page rather than just going to the emailgeeks.slack. So I'll see if I can find that and share it, so that you can go in and log in. And then, I mean, basically, the people you're talking to in the Email Geeks community tend to be the ones that are actually doing it all day long. So it's like, just like you, I'm balancing constantly doing work for Action Rocket, kind of coding emails, but then I'll jump in there when I've got a question and people will help out. And then when I can help out, I try and help out. But as well as on Slack, there's a big community of people on Twitter as well. So jump on there and you'll find exactly the same people helping people. A lot of people will answer a direct message or something. If you've spoken to them before, drop them a direct message and they'll give you a hand on something specific. And you'll get to know the people that know different ESPs or different parts of code. So a call out to like Anne Tomlin, who is a coder over in America. We talk to each other quite a lot about different code things that we work on. And Mark Robbins is another email coder in the UK. Who started with the interactive checkbox coding with CSS and kind of helped me develop that as well. And then others as well, like if you were using, like, for example, if you wanted to talk to someone about Malmodo, you could email Malmodo and you would get a response. But you could also, in the Email Geeks community, say, does anyone use Malmodo? Can anyone help? And you'll get 4 or 5 people straight away trying to help and answer you, basically, which is really nice.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any question unanswered there. So that tells you how helpful the community is. There's always at least one answer to any question out there. Sorry, Jay, you were saying something. Sorry, did I cut you there? No,
I was agreeing with you. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Everyone gets answered, and everyone will try and help. Even if they can't get the answer straight away, there'll be someone who will endeavor to help you. Especially if you're like me and searching for like a rendering problem or something's not working as you think. It becomes a big group effort of everyone trying out different things and trying to figure out what to do, and then sharing that with as many people as possible.
Yeah. This is, I think, a segue for us to now talk about interactive emails. All right, Jay, you've been in this for long. You've been coding them for 3 years now. In our language, we call you hyper early adopter. How did you get to know about that? I mean, I'm sure do you remember that phase in life when you heard about interactive emails and you wanted to just test them out?
Yeah, so Well, when I started at Action Rocket, we did a Email Geeks meetup in London, and yeah, we did an Email Geeks meetup in London, and I had only been there for 2 weeks, and like I said before, I was only just starting emails, and there was loads of presentations, and I got roped into talking about how I became a coder, from being just a marketer. But someone else, actually, Mark Robbins, spoke about AMP for email. And that was when it very first came out, and you couldn't send with any ESPs at the time. And he shared his experience with looking into AMP email. And straight away, I wanted to know more. And I was already kind of looking at emails that people were making that had tiny bits of interaction, like if you clicked on something and it would reveal something else or something like that. And posting on the Email Geeks group to say, how do I figure out how this works? And then people sharing what was going on. And then also using things like litmus scope, or clicking on the view online for emails and clicking on that view page source, and then just working through all of the code to try and figure out what happened and finding things. Yeah, and like Sean said, like the Remy Partinier from who's 𝐻TMLU on most of these social handles, he also advocates some interactive ways to do things, and he's got that email bugs repo on GitHub, and there's loads of people again on there who are contributing to how things are done. But yeah, so early off, I was probably doing interactive email really badly. I was probably I saw something I liked. It was shiny. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it, but it was there and it was cool, and it was something new. And we would pitch it to a client to say, we've got this new cool thing like a tap to reveal, and we think we can use it like this. And then it would be up to me whose idea it was to make it work, basically. And then I threw myself in at the deep end, figuring out how to make things work, promising a client that it would work, so it had to happen. And then staying late or starting early or talking to other email geeks about solutions, and finally getting there and getting it sorted. And then from there, figuring out the best way to do things. So it's probably starting off with far too much code, far too much CSS, just to do something very simple. And then the more I practiced it and the more I saw what other people were doing, it was really, really helpful.
Yeah. So it's been around for, I mean, as you said, I mean, it's been around for 3.5, 4 years now. It's just lately that it has started picking up. All right. It's just lately that there is this sentiment that's, I mean, there are again factions. There is a faction that's very aggressively pro AMP, and then there's a faction that still is debating, still is on the sidelines. Again, there's a faction that is anti AMP. What decode? I mean, if you have to decode these factions, Jay, who do you think these folks are? What are these factions composed of? What are the constituents of people who are pro and people who are anti? How do they look like? What are the differences between the two cohorts, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. So the people that are pro tend to be either people like me that find something shiny and just want to play with it. So then we go for it, investigate it, and then we see something that we like. And sometimes we don't think about like where it's coming from or the use cases, but we like to create new things in email, and people get excited about new things in email. And that's one side of the pro camp. Another side is people like Malmodo or other people who are early adopters of AMP that can see that using dynamic content or bringing that interactivity to more users through Gmail or something like that can expand what could be done in email and can make return on investment more, or you can bring more to your users and make the recipients get something much more out of email than you would do if you just used a static email, for example. And then the other side, which are anti-AMP, a lot of the sentiment around that is that really we would like email to be completely open source, and everyone should be able to do whatever they want in email, and we should be able to send one message which has universal support across all email clients. And if AMP is the way that it goes so that everyone can do that, that would be really good. But because not every email client supports it at the moment, they don't want to divide people into the AMP emails and the not AMP and just sending HTML. They kind of argue that they would rather HTML got more functions and more of the ability to do the interactive things that maybe we can do in some clients like Apple Mail, which supports a little bit more CSS, rather than try and switch to this new technology. And one of the things behind that, I think, is that Google started AMP So they were the big pushers of it for the web. And then there's a little bit of sentiment around that if Google, they have a bit of a history of dropping things. So like Google Plus disappeared, Google Reader disappeared. There's loads of Google products that kind of started and then stopped. So there's a bit of worry about that. But I think along with that, there is a few differences, because AMP is actually open source. And the people contributing to it are not all from Google. There is a high majority of people from Google, and they've got a good interest in it, but they want to keep it going. The JavaScript that you link to at the top, that is hosted by Google. So there's a bit of worry that maybe Google will just turn that off and then it won't work anymore. But from what we've seen and what everyone spoke about, it's kind of it's a technology that's around now, and that you should be kind of thinking about that in the long term. But short term, if the technology is there now, I don't see why you wouldn't try and use AMP to, even if it's only around for 2, 4, 5 years, like Google Plus was. If you're using that technology and getting good returns from it, then it's something that is worth looking at and investing in, I think. And with the open source community that are working on AMP, none of them have this view that it's going to disappear. They're all thinking it's going to be around forever. So I agree with that, which is obviously why I'm quite happy to spend time working on AMP. And I guess another part of it is that clients and people that are not coders want to get those features in email, and they're seeing that you can do it with AMP. So for me, working at an agency where we're trying to do the best for our clients and make sure everything's accessible, make sure everything is as good as it can be. If someone says we want to make something with AMP, we're not going to say, oh, maybe not, because Google might just turn it off. We're going to say, well, let's explore it, see what we can do. And as long as it's a good use case, then we should think about using it. And I think Modo is the same. They've kind of come up with the same idea, really.
Yeah, of course, we'll talk about some of the things that we are seeing here, some conversion uplifts that we have been recording. I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of our customers in the last 30 days, and that's a different segue into the talk, and I'll come to that later. But just one bit before we jump into that, Jay, how were your early prototypes on Interactive? I'm really, really curious about learning what was the first template all about that you coded. What was it about?
So the first
today.
Sorry.
And from there on till today.
Oh, so the first one, I think the first one really was just a click to reveal. It was literally just you click an image and then something appears behind it. And I think it was just literally one checkbox that you checked by a label that checked it, and then something else appeared. And that was for a pizza chain in the UK. So they would show an offer to someone. So that's kind of where it's come. And then now, and then in between, I've built games where you can play kind of noughts and crosses or tic-tac-toe, whichever you call it, or card pairing games or live search or anything like that. And then right up to now, where basically building a fully working, responsive cart where you can add products to it, get a dynamic amount that gets happened in the checkout, pre-fill a checkout once you get there, fully functioning forms and reviews so that you can interact with and things without leaving the email at all. And then pretty much building like a mini web page or a mini app within email that's supported in as many different clients as possible. And everything from like the practical kind of cart emails and things like that to something silly like creating a whack-a-mole game or something like that, where you hit our founder Elliot's head to lose points when you're kind of playing a game kind of thing. So I mean, once you understand those early principles of how things interact with each other and how they work, you definitely get a bit better. And as time goes on, also, I think the more parts to it that I didn't realize, like making it accessible so everyone can see it and everyone can read it and everyone can interact with it. And also how the user experience of if you add an animation or if you interact with one thing and how the next thing appears, or how there's a transition between different elements. All of those things were far, far off in my mind when I first started. All I wanted to do was click a button and get something to appear. And if that worked, that was magic. But now, I've done, as well as AMP emails with the interactive CSS ones, done ones with kind of 50, 60 different checkboxes with all different combinations to do different things. And then with AMP, you're pulling in dynamic content, changing day to day, pulling from APIs or pulling from the back end, which is something that I never thought I would do when I was literally just playing with HTML and CSS. So quite a big change.
Yeah. I mean, here customers, they've been asking for a whole host of possibilities. All right. I mean, some of them, we were talking to somebody day before yesterday who said that he wants a snake game inside
All right.
these
Yeah.
templates. Somebody was asking Tetris. All right. Because they said now that's exactly what's happening. They're saying that now we've started to imagine, now we've started to think, now we started to dream what is possible with emails, because this was just not even in the realm of our thinking. All right. And now that you've given us that direction as a company, now us internally, we folks are thinking, what's possible? What's the next frontier? How do we get more people to engage with outside of our apps? All right. Because they know that there are many, many threats looming. I mean, deplatforming is real. All right. There's a cookieless future staring them into the face. So how do they maximize what's their own media? And email comes to their mind. And now they've started to talk. Which was not the case till about 6 months ago when we were in the market selling. All right. In the market 6 months ago, we were just talking about forms. We were just talking about NPS surveys. We were just talking about the things that are baseline to AMP. You and I know about this. The markets still don't. All right. And now here markets have started to think. Now we've started to, and of course, I'll talk about this later as well. But the larger point I was trying to make is that it's here, it's people who are now sort of pushing us and motivating us to think beyond the templates that we have, which is the current repository of AMP that we have, which then leads me into results, Jay. I mean, everybody wants to see what's the kind of results that are coming out of AMP. All right, we have some sort of results ourselves, but you also were mentioning about this terrific uplift that you saw in one of your campaigns that you had with Braze, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a quick. Should I share the slide now, or shall I?
Yes.
Let me share that now. So I've got a very quick. It's literally one slide, which shows that we had one email we sent. It was just for a healthcare company in the UK called Babylon, and basically the interactive email we built meant that people could interact with this 3D figure which spun around, and it encouraged people to click through and take part in a health check and survey that was something that they were interested in wanting to get more people involved with. And by using AMP and different interactive for the HTML and CSS, overall, they got a 56% higher click-through rate than other emails that weren't interactive. So adding 56% of your click-through is massive, really, when you think about other ways. Yeah. So, and then also, it wasn't just people clicking on it and then not doing anything. They were clicking on it, and then because they were engaged by what was in the email, it meant there was a 20% uplift in conversion to do the act that they actually wanted them to do on the website as well, and within the app. So having that interactive element in an email, even though they didn't do absolutely everything within the email, meant that there was a massive uplift in conversions as well. So overall, from that one email, 56% more click-through in the interactive versions, and then a 20% increase in conversions. So yeah, a huge amount just from one AMP email.
Wow. I mean, how much time did this take you, Jay, to kind of code and configure the whole thing?
So probably 2 weeks. So the team at Babylon created the design. They come up with the kind of what they wanted, and then we discussed all the possibilities of how we could make that in email, and then basically. Yeah, I mean, it was our first client AMP project. So we'd built lots of things internally to practice and kind of get our heads around the code. But because it was our first client one, it added a bit more kind of, it's got to work and we've got to make sure everything's right. And so it was a bit of trial and error. So we probably might only take a week to do this now, but at the beginning it was 2 weeks. And once we figured out the different things we could do, it definitely helped. Yeah, I mean, just the results themselves were kind of amazing. So we were pretty happy with that.
Of course. I mean, these numbers are staggering. I guess what I'm going to show to the audience next, Jay, is nowhere close to the beauty of this template, but I'll still take a shot because we've seen some terrific numbers from our templates here. Just trying to figure out how to share my screen. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'm going to just show you basic templates, Jay. All right. I'm sure you've seen this already. This is nothing new for you, but it's new probably for some of the members in the audience.
Mhm.
For example, this customer of ours, Mudrex, all right. It's a Y Combinator S20 crypto startup. The way these guys work is that you sign up for the platform and then there's a webinar where they teach you how to work with the platform. All right. And they figured out that everybody who out of 10 people who attend a webinar, 9 eventually go and do a trade. All right, they run their first investment on the platform. So just increasing the number of attendees inside, I mean, in their webinars meant a direct uplift in revenue. And so they started using our templates here. It's nothing, just a simple form fill inside the email. This particular strategy has now doubled their webinar submissions. All right, and by about 60%, their actual webinar attendance has jumped. Okay, this is one template. All right, then there's this customer of ours, Hopspace. They run a a vocational ed tech company where they teach these off the beaten path sort of courses to their students, like chess, poker, etc. All right. They get their folks in the funnel through free educative classes, and then they have a demo where they can show them the whole roster of the curriculum that they have. They started using AMP emails here. Out of every 100 emails they're sending, Jay, they're getting 20 demos. Okay. And that's huge because they were using SMS, they were using HTML emails, and they were getting about 10 demos per 20,000 emails sent. And here they've just sent about 100 and they've already gotten about 20 demos. This was the latest we got from them. Then there's this customer called Kodo. It's a corporate credit card company, again, a YC startup. They are running us for their NPS surveys. And their surveys right now have jumped up by about 300%. Okay. So these are just some of the templates I'm showing here, Jay. This is what I could pick up from our customers in about the last 30 days. And as I said, they're nowhere close to the effort that you put in that beautiful template, all right? But even with that, even with the pre-built templates that we have, the kind of conversions that they're seeing is just exaggerating. So all that sort of adds into the argument as to why AMP is here to stay, because marketers are getting benefits out of it. Of course, people are they want to engage. That's why these numbers are there in front of us. So I think that argument that AMP might be deprioritized or it might not see the end of, say, the 5-year light down the line, I don't think that holds true anymore because the performance numbers are absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and if that continues for users, then Google or that open source community that can, like, they will feed off of that. And if you go on the amp.dev website, they've got case studies of more and more things that are have done really well, and they want people to do well with email. So that's the whole reason behind it. And the working group behind it as well are talking about how they can improve the accessibility and improve the way it works, and how they can get more email clients and more email service providers on board. So yeah, so I think it's going to keep growing, definitely.
Sure. And not just this, Jay, as I mentioned towards the beginning of the call, there are these other teams that we see using AMP a lot. For example, just the other day, we were talking to India's largest payments provider. All right. Their product team is trying to use AMP because they want to get a feature activated. All right.
Yeah.
So there's a feature activation email that they're going to send through AMP, where merchants who use their payment gateways can sort of push some of these discounts back to customers. And all you need to do is just toggle that feature inside the dashboard, and somehow people are not discovering that feature. They're trying to use AMP, and even in the beta results, they're seeing terrific responses because merchants are straight away configuring the feature from inside the email, and the state change happens inside the platform. So that's one additional vertical that we are seeing is, that's getting very, very pro AMP. And we just started talking to a lot of other product managers in other companies, and they've started to think about use cases. So I think it's expanding the footprint. Have you seen something like that yourself, Jay?
No, that's a new thing for me. Yeah.
So,
it's the old thing that we've always known. The more clicks it takes to do something, the less likely someone's going to do it. And AMP just shortens that click number dramatically, especially if you're looking at, well, that example is exactly what AMP is made for, isn't it? Could you go to the app? You've got to find your settings. You've got to find the right box, then find the checkbox. You've got to click it, press save, and then you've done it? Or can I send you an email and say, oh, it'll help if you just click this box, click it, and you're done. And it's the less friction between the user and the outcome has always been the aim, really. So AMP really helps with that.
Absolutely. But then there is this contradiction. There's this duality that stares us in the face. The moment a marketing team sees this, they're like, okay, now this is the answer to all my email marketing is. This is where now I think my bad days are behind me. All the gloomy days are now a thing of the past. Now I'm going to shatter all my records and all my numbers. But it doesn't work out all that. It doesn't work like that, right? What are the things you warn marketers who are going to be very, very excited about this?
So interactivity and AMP is not that silver bullet which is going to solve all of your interactive things, all of your email problems. Sorry. So it's not just make it interactive and then straight away you'll get the 50-60% open rate and you'll get all those conversions. It's making sure you've got the basics right. I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been Mark Robbins or Elliot. They were saying that like interactivity is the icing on the cake, but you've got to make sure that that cake is good to go to begin with. Otherwise, you're just icing bad. So, I mean, if you think about like if you've got personalization down and you're personalizing your emails and everyone's getting the emails at the correct time, if you're segmenting your base to make sure that you're sending emails to the correct person at the right time and you've got their details correct, your list is clean, so you're not sending emails to loads of junk spam email addresses. You're not, all of your emails are accessible so that as much of your audience can interact or use your emails already. You're sending out regular communications and the content that you've got in those communications are interesting and engaging and people want to look at your emails already. If you've got all of that sorted, then you add AMP and then you add interactivity, that's when you're going to see the higher conversion rates and the higher interaction. But if you are sending to just the old way of sending, or batch and blast, where you just send one email, the same email to the whole of your list, like thousands and thousands of people, you're sending a blanket email to them all. They're not really interested. You've not really thought about the communication or the message that you're trying to send through. And then you add interactivity to that. That's not gonna help. So yeah. And like Sean said, that it's AMP gives you that reach to Gmail and mail.ru and Yahoo. So that's kind of depending on the stats you look at. I mean, check out your own list to make sure that you've got the numbers to know how many of your users use those. But in general, that's around 40 to 50% of your whole email list is kind of using an email client which AMP will support. And then if you want to use the same interactivity in a HTML and CSS setting as well, then like Sean said, you can reach 85+% of the audience with an interactive email. So everyone could see that interactive email. And normally as well, I think we found with a lot of our clients as well, it depends on the client. But if you're a young brand or you're a tech brand or something like that, then you'll have a higher percentage of people using Gmail, or you'll have a higher percentage of people using Apple Mail than you would have someone maybe using Outlook, for example. So using AMP to target those is kind of could be a really big thing. Especially we had a client that had 65 to 70% of their audience for Gmail. So just by creating an AMP email, you can straight away get to 70% of your audience having an interactive feature. So it's definitely something to look at. But yeah, like you said, it's making sure that your foundations of your email is all good and then adding interactivity. If you have to
condense, so if you have to put out 5 first principles for email marketing, because we get this question a lot of folks here right now who are tuning in are doing email marketing for the first time. They're building out their strategy right now. All right. What are the 5 first principles that we'll share with them around all things email?
Yeah. So first of all, get your email list and make sure it's a healthy list. So like, make sure that you've not got spam people that you're sending to. Make sure that the people that have signed up want to get your emails. So they've either opted in or they've double opted in or something like that. So if you've got a healthy list, that's number 1. Number 2 is probably personalization. So you've got their first name. That's the start of personalization. Say hello and hi Jay or hi Bhavya, and give them some more information. That's going to feel a bit more personalized. Next, try and get a little bit more data on them to make it a little bit more personalized. So if you sell coffee, what type of coffee do they like? Maybe send them a specific email for that type of coffee. So that's kind of personalization. Segmentation is sending the email to someone that is going to want to receive that email and at the right kind of time. So instead of sending to everyone all the time and constantly doing the same thing, segment it out to people that maybe it's the person that's really engaged with your brand, someone who's not quite as engaged, and someone who hasn't engaged with any of your web or anything for kind of 6 to 12 months. They're the least engaged. So you're going to want to send a different message to each one of those audiences. So start with a healthy list, personalize, and then segment based on anything that you can to make sure that your emails are doing great. Fourth is probably in terms of development and design, you're looking at accessibility and making sure that your emails are accessible to as many people as possible. And not just say making sure screen readers can go through in case something like that, but also if images are turned off and you've got the alt text there and people can still understand your emails if the images are off, because although a lot of clients don't block images straight away now, there's loads of other instances where images might be lost. So if you've got poor signal, or you're going for a tunnel, or maybe you're using a different computer and the images are turned off, make sure your message still gets through, make sure the contrast is right, all that kind of thing. That's kind of accessibility, isn't it? Probably number 4. And then number 5 is kind of the content. So make sure what you've got in the email is the right thing. There's no, like, a lot of people fall into the trap of, I have to send an email every single Wednesday because my boss says I have to send an email on Wednesday, but they don't have anything to say, or they don't have anything good and engaging to say. So they send an email, but then the more times you do that and someone opens your email and says, oh, well, there's nothing really in here, I don't really like that, they're not going to open it next time you send them an email when you have got something important to say. So although regular emails are good, making sure your content is good in those emails is probably more important. So I'll try and sum them up if I can. So number 1 was a healthy list. Number 2 was personalization. 3 was segmentation. 4 was accessibility. And then 5 is the content that's in your email.
Yeah. And about accessibility, now that we are on that topic, Jay, because I think accessibility means a lot of things to a lot of folks. All right. I mean, I've never heard one standard definition around accessibility. Okay. What does accessibility mean to you personally, Jay? I mean, what's your own take around accessibility and the concept around it?
I want my emails to reach as many people as possible and for them to do the action that they want. That's what I think of accessibility as. So anything that encompasses getting them to see my email or interact with my email the way they want. So whether that's, like I said before, making sure that they work for screen readers, making sure they work for someone who only uses a keyboard to navigate, make sure that if they need the text creased in size, so that they can see it on their screen, make sure that it's responsive and relative throughout a design, and make sure the contrast is there so that if someone's colorblind or something like that, they can see it. But then also other things like on all of the email clients that it gets sent to, does it look right? Can you still read it? Can you still press the buttons? Or are all those links in the email working? That's a big part of accessibility as well. You don't want to send an email and then all the links are broken. No one can access anything you're doing then. So make sure your links work. And all of those design and code principles that make sure these things work is, I think, all enrolled into accessibility. And also user preferences as well. So kind of a user preference of, do I want the text bigger, or do I want the text smaller so I can read it? Or do I want animation turned off? Maybe animation makes me feel sick, or something like that. All of those elements, I think. So yeah, accessibility to me is making sure that 100% of the people that receive my email can do what they want to do with it. That's the way I looked at it.
And how big is your accessibility checklist when you code one?
Oh, wow. So AMP-wise, a lot of the features in AMP are already accessible by nature where they've been made with the group. So they're kind of, that's kind of covered already. But design-wise, we look at like the minimum size of font, the gaps, the designs. So it's quite a big checklist, but it's a checklist that once you work with a team that knows the things, then it becomes really quick and just kind of ticks off as you go through. So because of the designers at Action Rocket are always working on email, they know the size they need, they know the contrast, they know what can and can't be done. So you kind of go through the checklist in your mind almost and go, yeah, the font size is big enough, or yeah, they've used something that's accessible, and that's cool. And then the same with all the things I've seen on Malmodo as well. They seem to be designed and created with accessibility and everything in mind already. So when you've got templates like that kind of already there, then that kind of cuts off half of your design and your accessibility checklist anyway. And the last thing is just send it to as many different people as you can and get them to have a look. And that's kind of our last step of sending a live test to the whole team, or sending it to I've got 6 mobile phones and 3 laptops in front of me to check how things work. Send it to all of them, click on every link, make sure everything works. And then that's the kind of final accessibility check for us.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, we cover all bases by default because our templates, I mean, the open source allows us to take care of all those things that we have built upon. So that's not a bother with our customers. Where is it all headed to? I shared a couple of stories about how I see new verticals adopting AMP, and I spoke about how product teams, I think, are going to be one of our biggest, largest customers in times to come. What have you seen in your experience, Jay? Have you seen fringe use cases now becoming mainstream outside of marketing, or is it just marketing teams in your experience right now?
I mean, at Action Rocket, we do work with a large amount of marketing teams. That's our general group. So that's kind of it. But as well as that, there's product marketing teams and product managers and things like that. Basically, with AMP, we've seen that the beginnings of AMP was, I've seen something on the internet, or I've seen something in another email which is interactive, and I want more people to interact with it. And that started off with things like carousels or sliders, or having an animation or something like that. All of those things that kind of were standard across the web, but nothing special. Whereas now we're seeing people really looking into what AMP can do with dynamic content and using grabbing things from the back end, which you can't do with HTML emails. So having something live, so showing products or showing results or something like that. They're the things that we're seeing more people go towards. And the more different use cases and the more ideas that we get, we can kind of share those. And that's kind of triggering more people's minds. So exactly like, I'm going to take your product manager checkbox and stick that in my mind, and then next time I'm talking to someone, I'm going to say, right, you can use AMP to do this, so let's do it. And then that'll build up on their mind as well, and they'll think about what they can do. So that's definitely, I think, where things are going.
I mean, another interesting cohort that we've started talking to them. We've not gotten into active conversations, but another interesting cohort that's developing in front of us is our CX folks, customer experience managers, customer success teams, because they send out a lot of NPS surveys, right? And for them to collect, I mean, NPS at scale, improve it by about 3x, 4x, that's the typical response improvement that you get from a company like Mailmodo. That's another vertical that's sort of warming up to the whole concept. So I mean, I'm pretty sure there are more. I'm pretty sure there are more divisions who will use AMP in some way or the other. It's just that we haven't discovered them yet. Yeah,
I mean, the literally anything that you can think of, you can probably do. So you just need to kind of do it. I mean, I built one where I was using a public API to grab dad jokes. So jokes that were, you know what I mean? Like jokes that are not great, or Chuck Norris quotes or something like that. And I could send an email and you could just click through and just go through. The API would just constantly send you jokes or anything like that. So even though they're kind of fun experiments of things to do, they're new ways that people don't, like, you wouldn't realize that you could do that in email, that you can constantly have this stream of live content. Sports as well. One of the first emails that I built for a test was for the NFL, like the National Football League in America. And I wanted to show the live results from a region as soon as possible in my inbox, so that whenever I went to it to try and see what the latest results were, I just reopened the same email and it told me how well my team was doing. And that kind of strong attachment, I think, is kind of something that can be worked on, I think.
Yeah.
personalizing it to you kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's a strong use case. I'm also hearing this side of debate, Jay, where folks are saying, okay, it might get mainstream adoption, it will get mainstream adoption, but there will be more abuse than use. And that would put people off eventually. And then, I mean, it becomes a vicious loop, right? Do you think it's going to end up like that?
I mean, everything kind of goes through that cycle, and that if there's a new technology, someone will find a way to use it in a way that people don't really like. I mean, you've got phishing and spam emails already where people hit on a link. So if someone does want to do that, they can. But the good thing about AMP at the moment, I think, is that you have to go through a sign-up process with each email client to be white labeled, essentially. So AMP is almost kind of got more security around it than normal email has, because if I want to send an AMP email, if I did send an AMP email and it was phishing and it had malicious links in it or something like that, then it's pretty simple for the email client to just say, well, that's it now. You can't send AMP emails ever again. So, and if you report an AMP email, it goes straight back to the email clients and they'll take it into account. And if you constantly get things like that, then it could mean that you lose the ability to send AMP emails. So yeah, I mean, every piece of technology has someone that will use it in the wrong way. But because we're coming a bit more wise about it now, I think AMP is one of those where should hopefully mitigate any of that. I don't know if you've had experience of anything like that or.
No, I mean, what you're saying is right. We are also very consciously awake to how folks are using it, in which ways are they using it. And we also, of course, raise our flags when we have to. But then, as you said, since AMP approval in itself is quite a stringent process, we haven't heard of cases like these. But I was just combing through a couple of Hacker News forums where I read that. So I thought I should just pick that up.
Yeah, I think it's always the kind of growth hackers ideas sometimes don't translate well to AMP and to in normal email, let alone AMP. But also, yeah, I mean, also AMP has been AMP for email specifically. The use cases and the code behind it has been so well controlled and thought about that you can't, like, it doesn't allow you to import any JavaScript that isn't already in the open source area. And there's certain parts of AMP for the web which you can't use in email just because there's a possibility that it might be used maliciously. So it's kind of added even more security by kind of making sure that only the recommended components that have been through a strict kind of choice, they're there. So yeah, hopefully it should add a bit more to your it should alleviate most people's minds when they're getting AMP emails.
Absolutely. Jay, we have a couple of questions floating around in the comments. I'll just pick the first one. Ben asks us, what in your opinion is the biggest limitation or barrier to using AMP for email?
Currently, I think it's email service providers and the adoption from email clients. So a big step in March was Salesforce allowed users to use AMP for email inside Salesforce Marketing Cloud. That was kind of the first really big multinational ESP to allow it, as well as Braze was one of the first ones to allow it. So I think that's the biggest limitation or barrier at the moment. But another limitation, which kind of, I don't think it is, but it might be, is that if you don't know how to code an AMP email, then that's a limitation. But like, there's so many companies that can either make them for you, or you can go to someone like Malmodo and they have the pre-made templates. So I don't think that is as big a barrier as people think. Yeah,
and we're working overtime to sort of pull back some of those barriers. We're designing about 10 templates any given month, so we are aggressively going on that route. Sean asks us, is dark mode controllable in AMP?
It doesn't have the prefers color scheme that is there. So it doesn't have like the CSS prefers color scheme that allows you to do it at the moment. But so I don't think it adds any more control in Gmail, for example, to control dark mode than normal. It's kind of still going through the same Gmail dark mode in kind of where it changes the background colors and the text. It does it the same at the moment in AMP, but there is more people working towards sorting that out on the AMP side than there is for the normal HTML side. So there should be more support in the future, I think.
Yeah. All right, I'm not going to take away more of your time on this beautiful Friday, Jay. I think we are nearing the end of our questions. I think we have one more. I have time to pick one more question, which I will. Yash asks, as an email marketing agency, which type of company should I first pursue to provide AMP emails as a service? So Jay would, of course, have his opinion. Jay, what do you think? And then probably I'll add to what we are seeing here, and we can then make it a more robust
I
answer.
think
Jay.
all of your clients now probably have a use case. So someone that you work with at the moment that trusts you to create good emails, just ask them if they think, if you've got a good use case, then pitch it to them on how to use AMP. That's how we got with Babylon. That was the first one. We kind of spoke to them. We had a good relationship with them already, and we had a good use case, and then they went straight for it. If I had to choose a specific market, it would probably be, from our point of view, it would be like e-commerce marketers. Yeah. They're probably they could be the biggest return on investment if they put time into making an AMP email.
Yeah. That's exactly what we are seeing as well, Yash, here. E-commerce is a very natural fitment for us. Beyond that, most marketing flows in which there is a form involved of any kind is a very sticky proposition for us. For example, real estate is a huge proposition for us. EdTech is a strong proposition. Travel and technology companies, online travel agents, they are a great proposition for us. Anywhere where there is a form, anywhere where there's an NPS use case, anywhere where there is a Calendly insertion or a widget insertion inside email where they have to pick a time for a demo, that's a very strong use case. In fact, we are working with a couple of cryptocurrency exchanges here in India, where if the value of a particular coin reaches an all-time high or reaches an all-time low, a dynamic pricing email is triggered where folks can just buy coins from inside the email. So that's one use case we are seeing. As Jay said, it's very wide, it's very horizontal. But these are the ones that we are seeing typically a lot of action with. I hope that answers your question, Yash. I think we are towards the end of this, Jay. I don't see any more questions floating around. It was lovely having you. Thank you for sparing time. Any closing thoughts for the community out here?
No, a lot of people in the comments have said hello to like everyone. So kind of Ben and Hillel and all the people in Email Gigs that have kind of come on and said hello. Thanks for coming along and listening. And anyone who isn't part of the community, the link should be being shared so you can do it. And just come and talk to us. And also I'm on Twitter at emailj_, and feel free just to tweet me, DM me, do whatever you want, and I will help as much as I can. And anyone who just wants to talk about email, then I'm happy to jump on a call and talk about email for hours. So just do it.
Absolutely. When Jay says that, he means that, because whenever we've tried to speak to him, he's always made himself available, and that's been very kind of him. Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for taking out time. Thank you so much, everybody who took out time to join us. We're all available over our social handles. Just feel free to ping us if you have any other questions. Till next time.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.